Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And yes, as we all must be aware, it is International Women's Day today. And to celebrate International Women's Day, Bob is all about a key driving word called unity. And Bob celebrates this piece around unity where we look at connecting purposes all around the world to create one brand new earth with 1 billion purposes. And our way of celebrating that and being able to do that on International Women's Day is to be able to celebrate all the different relationships that go on inside a business and outside a business and also inside the home, and really have a celebration not only of a physical woman, but also that female energy that lives inside everyone. And so today who we're interviewing is Gina and Mel, and they are brother and sister from Mula. And obviously they've known each other their whole lifetime. And they now work together and they have lived together in their earlier years. And we wanted to celebrate the brother and sister relationship and also celebrate and acknowledge that you do work together and you have lived together, and how that energy transfer comes out in the two of you. And me being from a family of 2 older brothers and being very, very close with my brothers, this is quite an exciting and different interview for me. And I'm quite interested to know the answers to some of my questions. So thank you for joining me on this very special day, the two of you.
Well, thank you for inviting us. Terrific to be here and supporting this interview.
And thank you, Gina, because we met and I have actually interviewed you for people that want to watch the interview on the LB Presents YouTube channel, where you can follow that and you'll be able to watch in more detail about the interview, about what their business is about and who they are and what their purpose is. And this morning, I'm going to actually talk to you about women and the female energy and the celebration around that. So I'm going to first off kick off with you, Mel. Because, rather than kicking off with Gina, because I'd like you to actually talk to me about Gina. And growing up with Gina, obviously as a brother and sister, and the relationship that you had, and if you can spotlight her for a moment, which this is what it's all about, spotlighting key women in our lives. Could you spotlight her for me and talk to me about Gina and that relationship you had with her, and then what really came out for you moving into a working relationship with her as well as a business relationship?
Wow, all right, no problem. I don't know if you know, but there's 10-year gap between Gina and I. So it's quite a big gap for siblings.
Yes.
And but I do remember when she was a little girl, 3 or 4, she used to love football, and we used to go down the park and we used to kick a ball around, and consequently she became really good at football. She used to play for school and consequently university as well. So really from an early age, Gina did what she wanted to do. She was interested in what she was interested in, and very determined person as well. So, football is for boys. It was an irrelevance to her. She wanted to play football, so she played football. And I think very much that's been her attitude all her life. The fact that she's a woman, she's female, has never restricted her in terms of what she wanted to do and where she wanted to go in her life. Because of the age gap, of course, once I got to 18 and I went to university, she was 8, so she's still quite little. And after that, I obviously see her at holidays and weekends. And it wasn't until she invited me to come and help her out in her business many, many years later that really we got to know each other really, really well. Because, of course, we'd speak, we'd have family occasions, and we'd be over the phone. And everything was fine. But actually, we got very, very close when I came and helped her out in her business many, many years ago, about 10 years ago now, 9 or 10 years ago now. where I really saw her in action, and it was really interesting to see her operate in her business. Um, and I think Gina's leadership approach, the way she built the culture in her business, the way she involved everybody in decision making and brought people around her to get stuff done. Even though she was very much the leader, she didn't task people to do stuff. But how she built that culture in that organization was really fascinating to see, and you know, really good learning experience for me as well, at that stage. So I think there's a potted history there.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. That was a fantastic way to kick off the interview. I love how you brought it into the cultural perspective. Something I'd like to touch on with you then, Gina, is look, I was also brought up with two older brothers, loved football, spent a lot of time playing, like every single night, playing football or cricket or something that was, you know, in those days related to kind of more where the male side of people, you know, I wasn't allowed to do football at school when I was a girl. It just wasn't something that was even accessible at that age. And for you, can I take you back to your earlier years before we move into the business side of things? How did that play out for you? Because your brother said that you love playing football, you love that side of life, and there's obviously a drive and a determination. Could you just talk with me about the earlier stage of life, and then bringing some of that, and then we'll bring some of that into the working ethics?
Sure. It was interesting because, you know, when I football, I was at school and I wanted to play. There was only boys teams. But it was actually the male teachers that encouraged me and spoke to the female teachers about allowing me to play on the boys' teams. It was actually the female teachers that were a little bit resistant to it, you know, because they were worried because I wasn't a boy, maybe I wasn't strong enough, and you know, it was a boys' team. It was actually the male teachers that encouraged it, which was fantastic for me. And I think it was, you know, I think the whole point for me around today is really about that unity between men and women supporting each other. So I experienced that at a really early age. And the more the female teachers saw that I, you know, was as an equal to the boys playing, then it opened up so many more doors, you know, for the other girls. Taking that forward into my work life, you know, that connection, that balance has always been incredibly important to me and needed to drive any change. So for me, it can't be one or the other. It has to be both together. So, you know, learning that from the age of 4, you know, now into my 40s, you know, nothing has changed, but we're still having the same conversations. So that's the thing that hasn't changed. So, you know, having things like International Women's Day allows us to keep having those conversations, and it really, you know, shows that it's important to show young girls at a very, very young age what it means to, you know, to have that equal balance.
I'm going to move on to that equal balance then. I'm going to come on to the point of unity, because I loved that, Gina. And you know, you speak and I really reflect on my own childhood, because, you know, obviously, like I just said, growing up with 2 older brothers, there was a lot of boys in my house and so forth. And I really, I was probably very blessed with the fact that equality in that space was just a natural form, because 2 older brothers and all the boys there, you're just naturally growing up in that space. Did you have any point in as you started to grow up, that you felt any form of inequality, that you felt like the different playing field was there? Or did you keep that balance alive with your own grit and determination and just drive and actually just vision of where you wanted to move to?
No, there definitely was, I think, and I think as well for me it was more of an emotional thing. I felt like, you know, I couldn't cry, I couldn't show, in my view, a weakness in crying in front of the boys, for example, because boys didn't cry, when they got injured. So I couldn't. So I didn't. You know, I've broken my arm. I've broken ankle. I'd never cried. I cried inside, but I never showed it, and because I just felt like I couldn't. You know, because for me that was a real weakness. Interestingly, now, you know, there's lots of conversations around vulnerability and being open and honest and transparency, and vulnerability, particularly for men, becoming a huge conversation. And yet that's strength that's been in women forever, but actually it was seen as something, as a vulnerability. So, you know, and I think being in that situation, trying to kind of convince yourself that that is a strength is actually really quite hard to do. But again, the more we have the conversation around it, today it's a very different conversation. Vulnerability is such a massive strength, and you know, it's a game changer on lots of levels.
Oh, I'm going to bring that on to Mel then. Thank you, Gina. That's really good conversation to bring on, because I reflect on my son, who's 12 years of age, and my husband. And I often will say to my son, you know, the most powerful thing you can do is to show your emotion, to cry, to be able to show that vulnerable side of you, because that is an absolute strength. And it's one of the values that I've actually instilled in my son, to be able to express emotion. And yet, you know, at the same time, a boy is a boy and so forth, and they will go on their own journey to be strong, kind of stand in a space. And I wondered, from your perspective, Mel, growing up as a man, but all men have this female energy in them, and I recognize from my own working life, I have a lot of men around me that have a beautiful female energy around them, both my working husband and my husband. I wondered if you could express that from your perspective, and the female energy that lives in a man, and how does that come out, and how is that acceptable or not from you growing up, and have you had to learn to bring it out more as you've got older? And could you just give us your perspective on that, please?
Wow, yeah. I mean, I grew up in the 70s.
Right. Yeah.
That's a long, long time ago. And showing emotion, showing vulnerability as a bloke was not the thing to do by any stretch of the imagination. And I do think times have changed, and you'd like to think, I'd like to think that perhaps the way I brought out of my children is quite different to the generation before. I've got two grown-up daughters now, 21 and 19, and a son who's 17. And we've never conditioned our children to say, one, you mustn't show emotion, or two, you're a girl, therefore you can't or cannot do that. And I think this new generation of kids have got very different attitudes. But without being complacent about it, my daughters are very determined people. One is at drama school, and she's decided to be the gender equality officer at the school. So recognize that things have moved on, but there's still a lot to do. Yeah. My second daughter, she's at Exeter University Law School, and she's a social mobility officer for the Law Society. So yeah, they're female and they're determined, and they want to. Nothing's going to stop them, but they know that there's much to do in society to provide the equality of opportunity that for all genders, not necessarily just male female ones, around that. So I mean, you'd like to think that the attitudes that we grow up and the emotions that have the need to dampen down emotions, that is alleviated somewhat, but has it disappeared completely? I don't think so. And you know, our behaviors, do they change as much as we'd like? Perhaps not. You know, so I think on a personal basis, I'd like to think that I'm a lot more open in how I behave and how I act, and how I treat my children, and how I treat everybody around me and who I work with. But these are certainly very, very different times in the 70s and the 80s, I'm sure.
Massively. I reflect on my elder brothers, actually, and like you said, you kind of had more of a tough persona than in the days now, where people, I think, recognize more mental health in men as well. And it's a huge factor, because obviously men do bottle things up more than a woman will, just naturally, because a woman will sit around with her girlfriends and just talk about stuff. And that's an area in the female energy space that could really come out in the male side of things, to help hold a space for a man to be able to express themselves in a way like a woman would, or naturally would, just coming out from their perspective. There's a piece that I'd love to touch on from the two of you, because you came together and started working together. And again, I reflect on the males in my life that I work with, and my business partner, Darren, who I feel is like my business husband and my brother and my best friend, all wrapped up in one. And I naturally think about the female energy that lives in him, and how we, without even a second thought, to be fair, we will go into a meeting, and one of us will lead a meeting depending on the energy of one of us. And it's never a conversational point of ego, or that, maybe in years gone by, the man would lead something and the woman may sit behind, or anything like that. That's just not even a thought process. And I wondered, what happens for the two of you in business? What's the relationship that happens for you in the workplace, in meetings, in life? And how does that female energy play out in both of you in the workplace? And what's the environment that you create?
Wow. You want to go first? Shall I?
Either or. You get first, Mel.
I think. Oh, because I'm the bloke. Is that what you're saying?
No, just you felt your energy was going there first.
No, I think it is about the energy. I mean, Gina's very, very creative. She's very entrepreneurial. She's a real ideas person, and she can really, really understand a customer's needs and the client's needs and the situational needs, and she can pull those things out of the conversation very, very quickly. So whether that need is there, then she would lead that conversation, lead the discussion. What I would follow up with is I'm perhaps more structured, more organized, and I will pull those thoughts and threads together in a systematic way, and then we would together deliver that into a coherent message back to the client, for example. So depending on where we are in the process in that conversation with the client, then Gina might lead, or I might lead, wherever we are, or wherever the client's needs are at the end of the day. That's Gina. That's how I would perceive it. I don't know for you.
Yeah, Mel is incredibly kind of balancing for me. I can be very quick to react, sometimes too quick. But he's very good at making me look at things from different perspectives. He's very balancing, calming. He's very good at making me think about things in a slightly different way. And I do think that's maybe more of the parental side of him, maybe. Not just kind of as a father to his own children, but also the kind of brotherly relationship we have, the nurturing, and I need it, and I think it's really important that I have that. So the thing that I really recognized when he came into my business and worked with us was he's really good at listening, really good at accepting other people's views and opinions. Often for me, because I like to just crack on with things, sometimes I don't listen to everything. And I can see you're nodding, because I think
you're smiling, slightly with me and Karen.
Yeah, it's the entrepreneurial versus the balancer, and and I can get very impatient because of it. But he pulls me back, and so I think Mel does have a lot of those kind of female traits, which are incredible for me, but also incredible for the business. Certainly in my previous business, and and even now, where particular times have been tough in the last year, and it's that that gentle kind of confidence that we give each other. Where we pull each other back into the space that we need to move, things forwards in a very constructive way. And no different to the day he took me to the park and told me to kick the ball, and why go and play in the team. It's exactly the same. It's no different.
Oh, I love that. That is just gorgeous. And I really reflect on my own relationships. It's like watching a mirror with the two of you, with myself and Darren sometimes. In my last, I've got 2 questions left for you. And the first question, I'd like you to put your vision goggles on and just for a moment, kind of just do a bit of future gazing. And what I'm going to say is, we asked our kids in Bob, and we asked them this question: what do you believe we could do to create an equal future? And that means unity, and also for women in business and leadership. Well, what do you feel like we could do to create an equal future? And I'm going to ask you first, Gina. What do you feel could be your answer on that?
Wow, it's a big question, isn't it? I'd love to hear the kids' answers, actually. That'd be really
cool. Brilliant. They're all coming out on social media all day. So.
Correct. Well, look, I think for me, if you feel like somebody hasn't got a voice, help them find that voice. If you can't help them find their voice, be the voice for them. I think we've got to use every opportunity to create that platform for change. And there's a long way to go, but I think the more we have these conversations, and the more we start it, with kids at such a young age, then whether you're male or female is just going to be irrelevant, isn't it? It's just going to be what you're going to do in the world, where you're going to leave your mark, how you're going to change it, what's going to be your impact, what do you want to be known for, which is what you say all the time. For me, they're the conversations we should be having. So for me, creating platforms for everybody.
Oh, that was lovely. Thank you. And then Mel, same question to you, please.
I think just building on what Gina's just been saying there is just the opportunity and equality of opportunity for people. Both Gina and I are involved with an organization that help female entrepreneurs. And one of the shocking statistics is 2% of venture capital funds go to female-led businesses, which one is just a blatant metric around how unequal things are. But conversely, what a wonderful, fantastic opportunity to opening up the economy and creating new opportunities and business for people as well. So, and I think perhaps I'll be talking about this to my daughters has encouraged them to say, we're okay, we're doing well, but other people may need help, and therefore they're doing something positive about and systemic change and positive around changing things and improving the situation for gender equality or social mobility in either case. So the equality of opportunity, I think that's what we should do. We shouldn't. I think today, International Women's Day, is important. Want to celebrate role models and people have done well and managed to break through, but also for us all to reflect and actually say, well, what still needs to change, what still needs to be done, and how to drive that. And for me, it'll be equality of opportunity. That's what we need to continue to drive.
When I asked my son this question, he looked at me blankly and he said, what do you mean that we need to create equality for men and women? They are already equal. And I looked and I said to myself, And that is the next generation. They are in a mindset now where if we can build this foundation and build it really well, when they come into the world and they take over the businesses and they're running the economy and so forth, really, they won't even be, hopefully, in a mindset where you even need to do anything, because they have been brought up by our generation to understand that this is just how it is now, and this is how it should be, and they don't even have a thought process around it. And so I love that, what you just said, Mel. If we can build the foundations, and Gina, and get the foundations right, then that energy and mindset should walk into a space where actually we're just in a mindset of that is what it is. And my last conversation for you is this. It is a celebratory day. It's a celebration. And we've been in a pandemic. We are still in one, and a recession. And I would like to celebrate the moments that have been over the last, whether it's the last year or the last 5 years or the last 10 years, because sometimes I often feel like we look back on things and we say, I could have done that differently. It could have been that we didn't do it that way. And I often think that people miss the celebration of the moment and the celebration of time, and look at something and go, gosh, that was great. And now how do we build on that? So for the two of you, and Mel, we'll start with you. Could you think about a celebration? How do we celebrate, whether it's a moment in time, you could talk about the last month, you could talk about the last year, you can talk about the last 5 years, something that would be a celebration of a moment that we're going to celebrate and move on and build with.
Wow, I don't know. I guess one thing that the last year has taught us is we really need to celebrate every moment with people who are nearest and dearest to us. For us, actually, the last year has been wonderful. We've had our two grown-up children, two of our eldest children, at home for most of it, when they should have been at university or at drama school. Not so good for them, but really, really nice for us. But we should really just celebrate the small things and our relationships and people around us as much as we can, and need to continue doing it. And it's not about the big fancy holidays halfway around the world that's important in reality. It's those special moments that we have with our nearest and dearest. So celebrate those.
Perfect. Tim and Jackie said the same thing, as did I.
Good.
And so beautifully said. Thank you, Mel. I think as a parent particularly, you come to realize, gosh, what a blessing we've had our children around us. And I felt very sad today that my kids went back to school, and I saw my daughter walk into the classroom and I nearly cried, and I went, oh, I've actually really enjoyed having them at home and seeing them and being able to spend every lunchtime with them. It's been quite wonderful, really. So. And then Gina, the same question to you, a celebration.
For me, community has been incredible for me. I don't have children, but I have a dog. It's obviously not quite the same. But for me, it's that community. I've met some incredible people through Bob Earth who I know are going to be really good friends. And I think it's been incredibly a great structure, people to talk to. It's been very open and honest conversation. I think without that, particularly last year, I think it mentally, I think we would have been in a very different place, particularly for me. And I've loved it. I think it's just been absolutely amazing. So for me, community, collaboration, meeting new people, and strengthening the relationship.
And Iona said something beautiful to us the other day: common unity, community.
Nice.
And when we all come together in a common unity, then we create a community. And I really want to acknowledge you for that comment, because for us also, the Bob Earth community that came together during the pandemic, and we were able to we felt the love from, us giving love, but also receiving so much love as we've gone through this journey. It also kept us going. you know, and building this space of community has been something remarkable, and something that Darren and I and Catherine and we spoke about quite a lot around how do we bring the community together. And actually the pandemic did it for us, and we really acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge you for being part of the community, and thank you so much for being interviewed today, the two of you, on International Women's Day, because we actually wanted to celebrate the energy and the female energy and the relationships that sit inside all of us, from a brother, sister, husband, wife, business husband, wife, whether you're a woman and a woman, or a man and a man, there's a female male energy that sits in everyone, and that is the unity piece that sits in all. So thank you so much, and thank you for celebrating Women's Day with us today.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye-bye, Lindsay. Okay. Bye-bye.